Good morning and welcome to Fox 29's News Now on this Wednesday morning. We're going to get started with some local news for you out of Manayunk. A new warning for parents about dating apps. Police say a man sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl after meeting her on an app. Fox 29's Steve Keeley filed this report this morning. Philadelphia police arrested the man in connection with an alleged rape involving a young girl in the Roxborough section. Police say 28-year-old Michael Kaufman picked the girl up Monday night at Kelly Park, located on the 400 block of Parker Avenue. The girl originally told officers that she was abducted by a white man who held a gun to her head and made her get into his car. The teen changed her story and reported to officers that she was taken to the man's home on the 4600 block of Umbria Street in Manayunk, where the teen says she was raped. Police say the girl was then brought back to the park, where she fled. Authorities are now reminding the public about the dangers of online apps.
If I had teenage children, I would not let them go on those apps. They're very dangerous. Trust me. You know, we get a lot of jobs as a result of that, and I would stay off of those. You have no idea who you're interacting with at all. The internet can be a dangerous place, especially for a minor. Very dangerous. So you got to be careful.
Kaufman was charged with rape, corruption of minors, and sexual assault. And in Delaware County this morning, police need your help identifying a woman who they say is stealing security cameras. She's allegedly been doing it for the last couple of weeks. Fox 29's Lauren Johnson filed this report.
Well, you know, the chief here never bites his tongue, and so he called this one a stupid crime, but here's why. It's a woman caught on camera stealing cameras, and that's a sure way to get caught if and when someone recognizes her face. So let's take a look. Police released these images yesterday on Twitter with a comical message saying, since she likes cameras so much, we'd like to show her our mugshot camera. The chief says since June 7th, 6 systems have been stolen. She usually strikes at night around 7 or 8 p.m. when it's dark. Footage has been obtained from 3 specific areas in and around Upper Darby.
It's stupid. Obviously, she's probably got her up because it's brazenness that she gets away with what she's getting away with. And I would say we had 6 incidents since less than a month, so that's pretty significant.
I saw the camera laying there, and I picked it up, and it was blinking red. I put it back down, thinking it belonged to somebody, but I didn't know who. So, but it wasn't mine, so I put it back. I have a friend down the alley who I was telling it to, and he says, oh, our camera was stolen. And so I took him down and showed him where I found it.
I think it's teenage vandalism more than the plot.
More than selling it or something?
Like we'll knock that camera out and then rob the house.
Obviously, there must be a need for it, either selling them on the street or whatever. I have no idea, but we'll catch her. It's just a matter of time.
In one of the cases, a woman rides right up on a bicycle while the camera's rolling and the theft is happening. Police believe she might be working with that woman, and they want to talk to her as well. Chief Chitwood says everybody has cameras these days, and while many around the city are inoperable, this woman chose working cameras, unfortunately for her. So the big why, maybe it's to sell them for cash. Chief Chitwood says if she is taking them to pawn shops, because she hasn't thought that part out just yet, it's going to be really easy to catch up with her. But if she's selling them on the streets, just peer-to-peer, it's going to be much harder to track her down. That's why they need the public's help in identifying who this woman is.
And in political news this morning, former special counsel Robert Mueller has agreed to testify publicly before Congress on July 17th after Democrats issued subpoenas to compel him to appear, the chairman of 2 House committees announced Tuesday. Fox's Doug Luzader has more on the story this morning from Washington.
Capitol Hill, talking about D.C., is bracing this morning for what promises to be, later on this month, a blockbuster hearing that will be televised.
Because, despite what he was saying earlier, former special counsel Robert Mueller has agreed to testify now in public. In fact, it'll be 2 different hearings about his report into the Russian election interference and allegations of presidential obstruction.
Get the popcorn ready, Doug Luzader.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of popcorn around here. This is going to be something else. This whole thing came together very quickly overnight, and both Democrats and Republicans sense an opportunity here.
Good morning.
Special Counsel Robert Mueller once again in the spotlight, even if just last month he said this.
Now, I hope and expect this to be the only time that I will speak to you in this manner.
Not so fast, says Congress, which has subpoenaed Mueller, and he has agreed to show up in 3 weeks and testify in public about his report on Russian election interference, and more importantly for Democrats, whether President Trump obstructed justice in the investigation.
We have fact questions about some of the statements that are made in the report, so there are any number of issues that we wish to cover with him.
The president had what appeared to be a two-word reaction on Twitter: presidential harassment. But one member of his legal team seemed to almost welcome it.
We're not concerned about Bob Mueller testifying. I think he's going to stick to his report, and he'll have questions he's going to have to answer regarding this investigation.
Because Republicans will want to know more about the origins of the Russia probe and whether members of Mueller's team were biased.
Bob Mueller better be prepared, because I can tell you he will be cross-examined for the first time, and the American people will start to see the flaws in his report.
Well, maybe, but both sides may walk away from this kind of disappointed. When Mueller spoke last month, he said a couple of things. First of all, he made it clear that he did not want to come here to testify on Capitol Hill, but he also said that if he did, he would just stick to what was in that written report and not get to anything else. We'll see next month whether he sticks to that.
Yeah,
Back to you
because
guys.
the legislators are going to be pushing him in other directions for sure. Doug, thank you. We'll see you again tomorrow.
And in consumer news this morning, if you're looking to live a life of luxury, Airbnb has you covered. We checked in this morning with Fox Business to learn how the brand is allowing travelers to live in the most expensive homes in the world.
So when you think about Airbnb, you think, okay, I'm going to get a great deal, find a great place to stay for cheap, and it's going to work out. You don't necessarily think of fancy, top-of-the-line luxury.
No, just got everybody, a normal house in some town.
Just a place to lay your head.
Deirdre, this is, now we can stay in fancy places like castles in Ireland.
You sure
or
can.
England. Tell me more.
And it's going to cost you, so I have to put that little addendum in. But Mike and Alex, you're right. This is such a far cry from the Airbnb founders who were literally blowing up air mattresses and putting them on the floor of their San Francisco apartments way back in the day, more than a decade ago. So now you can rent the villa where the novelist Ian Fleming supposedly wrote one of the books that became a 007 movie. There's mansions in Bel Air. There's an island in French Polynesia.
Okay.
Lots to choose from.
Hey,
Mansion in Bel Air. Basically, but you have to pay.
Hey, Deirdre, just real quick. We're following a dinosaur through the streets of Philadelphia. So let's punch up that camera
As you
full
do.
and let you continue to talk. How much is this going to cost me, though? Is it like hundreds, a lot of money?
A lot of money. It's at least $1,000 a night for various experiences. There's one that I saw for $100,000 a night. So I think it's pretty safe to say you have to be within that 1% of the population to be able to spring for this. Also, I want to know who the owners are of these properties, because if you own that and then you're willing to let strangers stay there.
Yeah.
But it's more about the experience. It's not just about staying there. You get VIP concierge
Yeah, we got
service. You get to learn about the property.
No,
Mike's like, all right. We have a dinosaur here.
Yeah, please. Just give me the name of it again. How do I get to it? It's called B&B.
You just go right on Airbnb. You put in Airbnb luxury. It'll connect you right away.
Luxury.
Great job. We'll see you again tomorrow, I hope.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good luck with the dinosaur.
She does
we'll need it.
I like her. She does a great job.
Yes, she does.
So where are we? Coming up on the
Market
Rite
Street.
Aid? They're over there. Market Street.
10th and Market.
Hey, by the way, does anybody know when the gallery's going to open again?
I hope soon.
It looks like it's getting close.
But no, because I was just there yesterday, because they have an H&M sign. I'm like, oh, great, an H&M. But it's still, they just have signs up. There's nothing, it's still being worked on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
still
we
a lot
got
more
that.
work to do.
They're really trying to improve this part of the city, though.
It's like, I see it's like a mini New York, because look, they have like the billboards, the digital signs.
Get some big Oh, is that a Philly cop on the right there? So we're coming up on Isn't there a new...
like especially right here. See, there's like 3 different
Yeah.
digital huge billboards.
Is that the Lowe's? Man, we're not to the
Yeah,
Lowe's yet.
almost there. We're almost there. But to
Yeah.
the right, that's the Hard Rock.
Yeah, so that's 12th and Market.
Mm-hmm.
This would be interesting going around City Hall.
Yes. I wonder what Billy Penn will think of it.
I don't know.
I guess he's so high up, the dinosaur can't get to him.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
All right, we'll take a quick break. Come back and follow this as it heads now to the Ben Franklin Parkway. And I promise you we're going to talk about the Phillies a little bit.
And moving on to your Fox 29 weather authority. The Philadelphia area is slated for a hot and sunny day Wednesday with a high of 91 degrees. Wednesday is expected to be the hottest day of 2019 so far, with temperatures forecasted to stay in the low 90s for the majority of this week. But conditions are expected to remain dry through Saturday at least, when afternoon thunderstorms are expected. Here we have a look at current temperatures in our area. Already 74 degrees up in Mount Pocono and 80 degrees in Reading. Just slightly higher, 82 degrees right here in Philadelphia, and a few degrees cooler down in Wildwood, Atlantic City, down the shore. And looking ahead to our 7-day forecast, again, it's hot and sunny today, which should make for, some warm baseball at 7 o'clock when the Phillies take on the Mets again at home. And more similar conditions tomorrow for Thursday, again on Friday, before some thunderstorms come our way this Saturday. And that humidity will come back into the forecast by Sunday. But overall, we're looking at some hot and sunny days here in Philadelphia ahead. And don't forget to download the latest version of the Fox 29 Weather Authority app to have the latest forecast right at your fingertips. And back to local news this morning. The chairman of the Pennsylvania GOP has resigned over a sexting scandal. A Philadelphia Inquirer report says 51-year-old Val DiGiorgio sent sexually explicit texts and a photo to former Philadelphia council candidate Irina Goldstein. She says those texts were sexual harassment. DiGiorgio claims all communication between them was consensual. And in Philadelphia yesterday, flames tore through a building and destroyed 2 businesses in Juniata. Sky Fox was over the scene near Castor and Erie Avenues yesterday afternoon. The flames were under control in less than an hour, but that was enough time to destroy Refresh Laundromat and Pharmacy of America. The pharmacy owner tells Fox 29 that he grew up in the neighborhood and it was his dream to open a pharmacy in his community. The fire is for sure a setback, but he tells us he has plans to rebuild.
In 2 days, June 28th would have been our 10-year anniversary. This is a dream, but this fire is not going to kill my dream or the dream of my staff.
The fire commissioner tells Fox 29 no one was hurt and investigators are now working to determine a cause. And the investigation continues this morning into the row home fire that broke out yesterday morning in the city's Logan section. A woman lived in the apartment on the 4900 block of North 12th Street with her 5 kids, 2 of their boyfriends, and 4 grandchildren. Some of the people inside the home had to jump to their safety. Neighbors say someone threw a device onto the front porch, igniting the fire. Right now, fire officials are not calling the fire suspicious. Many of the people living inside the home were injured, but they are expected to survive. And in Bucks County this morning, police are asking for your help finding a person of interest in a series of armed robberies. Warminster police are looking for 23-year-old Joseph Wolfgang Trout. Police say they want to speak to him about 4 armed robberies that happened between June 19th and June 23rd at 3 gas stations and a convenience store. Police also say Trout is wanted for parole violations. If you see the man, you are urged to contact police. And in Camden County, police are investigating a suspicious fire at a playground in Pine Hill. The fire happened Saturday at the Charles Bowen Recreational Complex on South Club Road. They believe it was intentionally set. Police are offering a $1,000 reward for information on the fire. And on Good Day this morning, the FBI and Burlington County authorities are hoping an enhanced version of an audio clip can help solve the mystery of what happened to a 14-year-old New Jersey girl who disappeared all the way back in 1974. Captain John Fine from the City of Burlington Police Department joined Good Day this morning to discuss.
This story, and because we started following it yesterday, and it's so intriguing out of Burlington County.
Yeah, and it's made national news. Local officials and the FBI, they hope an enhanced version of an audio clip can help solve a mystery that began 35 years ago.
Let's try to set this up again. In 1974, 14-year-old Margaret Ellen Fox was last seen getting off of a bus in Mount Holly, where she went to meet someone who answered her ad for a babysitter, right? She came from her home in Burlington City. Hours later, her parents received a call because she never came back home. They received this random phone call. Again, this is from 1974.
$10,000 might be a lot of bread, but your daughter's life is a butter topping. Who is it?
The FBI has a long memory. The community we serve should know that we will tirelessly pursue all viable leads in the interest of delivering justice. We realize that in missing person cases, especially those involving children, there's a family at the other end who is enduring heartache every day, not knowing what happened to their loved one.
So all these years later, they refuse to let this case go, which is beautiful. The FBI is offering up to $25,000 for information leading to an arrest or conviction in the case. And the man you saw in the background there joins us right here on the desk. Captain John Fine, good to see you again, of the City of Burlington Police Department. So that audio tape we just heard there, how do we have that?
When it comes down to technology with the FBI Quantico, fortunately they were able to enhance it and kind of clean it up in order to send it out publicly.
So how is it? Yeah. Is it a voicemail, or were you guys recording it because they were expecting a phone call?
So at the house of the Fox house, shortly thereafter the kidnapping, the FBI was able to put like a recording device on the phone, so anybody that called the house of the Fox house was able to be recorded.
What's commonly called that they tapped their phone, because we didn't have voicemail back then. We didn't have really answer machines of very high quality. So they came into the home and tapped their phone.
Yeah, I mean, in the 1970s, I'm sure it was some kind of big recording device.
Right.
So definitely before my time. But again, fortunately, we were able to record that audio with technology upgrades and everything with the FBI. We can't be more appreciative of their efforts.
Well, we also had some pictures up there. This is what the FBI, they think that she might look like today.
It's age enhanced. Yeah,
age enhanced. So, you know, hopefully she's still with us.
49.
Yeah.
It's been that long. And there's been no type of clues, no breaks in the case at all since that day?
There's been like reports and different things that they followed up on. I can tell you the original investigators spent tireless hours. One of the original investigators, Chief Harry McConnell from the prosecutor's office, he unfortunately passed away, as well as the other parents. But when they interviewed the original investigator, they said one thing that he regrets is that he was never able to find him.
But she was headed to a specific location, wasn't she?
She was headed to Mount Holly, correct.
But not a specific house?
No, so when the individual called the dad, talked to the dad later that night, he said, meet me at the corner of Pioneer Mill.
Oh my gosh. But it's amazing to me that they will not give up.
No. Margaret Fox has been Burlington City's missing daughter. It seems like the entire community kind of has adopted Margaret and would like to bring her home. You know, there's obviously a probability that she's most likely deceased.
Right.
So if we could just have somebody in the public call us, let us know where her remains are. In the event that she's, deceased, let us bring her home, give her a proper burial, make closure to the family, and give the answers our community that we need.
Thank you for coming in.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
We are going to take you over now to Washington, where the Senate is holding a hearing on the growing crisis at the southern border. Stay with us.
Policy, certain asylum seekers, including families, are sent back to Mexico to wait in that country for the entire duration of their U.S. immigration court proceedings. That could take months, could take years. And so we do know that there's a challenge in federal court, but I'm concerned that this policy is going to drive more and more people into the arms of those who wish to exploit them, making the problem worse. And I can tell you that the State Department's own annual report backs me up on this. So my question to you, and I'm hoping that you can provide us the numbers if you don't have them, do you know how many individuals seeking asylum that DHS has returned to Mexico under the Migrant Protocols program policy? Any of you?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I have the numbers for office field operations. So for the ports of entry, we've running MPP in San Diego, and to date we've returned 665, and Calexico 96, and El Paso 539, so 1,300.
And how many families were part of an arriving as a family unit? Excuse me.
I'll have to get back to you on that number. I don't have that.
And also, do you know the number of unaccompanied minors?
Minors would not be part of the program. They're not considered for MPP.
And to your knowledge, are there plans to expand these policies beyond San Ysidro, Calexico, and the El Paso ports of entry?
We are in ongoing discussions internally and with the Mexican authorities on expansion.
So you don't have a timeline for when?
I don't.
And you can report back to us when you do?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I also want to say that reports have indicated that DHS has returned to Mexico asylum seekers who are pregnant or children with neurological disorders. That is despite guidance that clearly states individuals with known medical issues shouldn't be subject to this policy. Have we been investigating these cases? Do you know of any?
I'm not aware of the allegations, but we generally do not include migrants that have a known physical or mental illness. If there's any criminality, a history of violence.
What about pregnant women?
If a migrant is in a long-term pregnancy or their sensitivities to the pregnancy.
They're all long-term pregnancies. Or they have an end to the term, but we know the term of that.
Yes. They would not be considered.
Thank you. I have a couple of minutes. I want to go back and talk about metering at the ports of entry. Of course, again, because CBP, you have a practice of metering, queue management, as you call it, at the ports of entry all along the U.S.-Mexico border, where asylum seekers are required to wait for indefinite periods for the opportunity just to be processed. Can you talk to me about why you're employing the process of metering or queue management, and is it happening across all ports of entry?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, it is. It's a discretionary balance used by our port managers to really balance and assess our mission requirements, our counter-narcotic, our facilitation of trade and travel, and the processing of migrants, and balancing our resources against that. So putting them in all those different areas and without focusing them in any one particular area.
So how can we help you, as Congress, how can we help you speed up this process so you don't have to manage this queue and you can get through?
Well, I think it's the whole process, Senator. It's our facilities that weren't designed to house large groups of individuals, and then ICRO is not in a position to be able to take them. So if we did increase, then we would be holding them longer, and ERO would have an increased difficulty in finding bed space. So it's a balance that right now, with ERO and HHS's capacity issues, is adequate.
So we need to have people talking to each other to increase the flow and the capacity of what we can do, and of course, to Senator Hassan's point, doing it in a humane and kind way. Can you tell me, too, the numbers quickly before I end here, how many migrants you are processing at CBP daily?
At our ports of entry? It varies across the southwest border based on that balance, as I mentioned, the discretionary balance of what we're
Can you give me a rough estimate?
300.
And do you know how many are currently in line waiting in Mexico then?
That's difficult to nail down because those numbers come from the Mexican authorities, but we've been told in each one of the areas roughly 3,000 to 4,000.
And so, based on what you know, what do you believe the average time, what do you know as to be the average time an asylum seeker will have to wait?
It's been some time since I've checked with San Diego, but what I last heard a few months ago was 5 to 6 weeks.
5 to 6 weeks. Well, I hope that, again, we can do something about this, that we can help. So many more questions we'll submit for the record about the conditions for children, young families, and we want to be sure that we stop the exploitation, because nothing in my mind is more heartbreaking. I can only imagine when you open that trailer what it did to you and the nightmares you probably have remembering that. So I want that to motivate us to do the right things. Thank you.
So, Senator Rosen, because we asked a similar question, I got a response, so to get it in the record, currently as of 6/16, June 16th of this year, 11,575 individuals have been returned to remain in Mexico. 1,109 came from the ports of entry, 10,466 came from Border Patrol. So about 10% come through the ports of entry. The rest have come into this country illegally, and then they're returned. So again, the total number is 11,575. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I want to pick up on those questions of Senator Rosen and that number. So is that the number of individuals turned away at the port of entry under the current metering practices? Just if you could give me a number of that, I want to clarify that. Either Mr. Hastings or Mr. Howe.
Yeah,
how many have been turned away because of the metering process?
That's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to identify the number that are not crossing the boundary line. In many cases, the NGOs are holding them in Mexico or caring for them until there's an opportunity for us to take on more migrants. That's a communication between us, the Mexican authorities, and the NGO. So it's nearly impossible.
There are folks coming across, and you're saying you can't come across today because of the metering process? You're saying you don't know that number?
We don't.
So, obviously the tragic situation we've all talked about with his father and his young daughter. The story is that he died after attempting to seek asylum at a port of entry, and he waited for over 2 months in Mexico. What, to both Mr. Hastings and Mr. Howe, what do you think is the relationship between the metering at the ports of entry and an increase in families that we're seeing that are trying to cross between ports of entry?
Sir, I just know that, we've seen an increase in the volume of family units continue to build month after month. I'm not sure what the result is with the queue management. When we're interviewing these individuals, quite frankly, what they're telling us is we've heard on social media, or we have heard from folks who are already in the country, bring a child and you'll be set free. That's what we're hearing.
Well, that's not my question. My question is, what is the relationship? You're metering folks that are coming across the port of entry, so they can't. We know this gentleman who tragically died with his daughter was waiting 2 months and said was turned away from the metering, and so then decided to go not in a port of entry, and we're seeing more and more folks. What's the relationship of people who, if they can't come through a port of entry, they're now trying to cross at other places in the border?
I think it's difficult for me to speculate, Senator, what numbers that occur. As I said to Senator Rosen, it's that delicate balance of managing our resources at all our different mission sets. And processing migrants is important, but if we were to process more migrants, it's going to have to come from something. So it's not going to come from a counter-narcotic mission. It's not going to come from a national security initiative. So it would have to come from facilitation. And we don't want to, have U.S. citizens waiting longer to return to the United States. So that balance is what we're trying to strike.
Well, we're discussing also trafficking and smugglers and the problem related to that. And so does it make sense that if it's more difficult to come across the port of entry and just present yourself at a port of entry to the legal process, and that you want to go then or attempt to get into the country a different way, that might actually increase the business for smugglers and cartels who will say, we'll take care of the situation for you, just pay us, and we'll get you in some other way? Is there a correlation there? Is there or not?
Again, I think it's difficult to speculate. We do have smuggling attempts that occur at our ports of entry. We have over 400 a year across the southwest border where migrants are either presenting somebody else's documents or they're hidden in a vehicle. So it's difficult for me to know.
Is there anything being done at the Mexican border to ensure the migrants who are waiting to cross are not being recruited by smugglers at the border or being approached to use their services? Are either we or the Mexican government engaged in attempting to disrupt that kind of business connection?
I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, but the Mexican authorities would have that responsibility.
Would we want to know what the Mexican authorities are doing, and would we encourage them to do something along those lines?
Absolutely.
Why has that not been done?
I'm sure it has been done at the local level. Where
Can we find out? Is it possible to get that information?
Absolutely.
I'd appreciate that. CBP has said that between mid-April and June 14th, over 1,800 family units were interviewed who presented indications of fraud, with 275 fraudulent families identified, is based on the data that I have. Chief Hastings, how many total migrants crossed the southern border during that time frame? I believe it's roughly over 200,000. Is that accurate?
Sir, what was the time frame again? I'm sorry.
Mid-April to June 14th. So April, June, 2 months.
April to June, so we've had a high volume, I think 132,000 last month. I can tell you for the year that we've had 5,100 fraudulent claims so far, fraudulent family claims that we know of.
Is that what time frame is that, through recent?
That's for the fiscal year of
fiscal year. So yeah, I'm looking at a 2-month period here.
I don't have that
That's fine.
specific information, but I think the biggest thing and one of the most important things is you heard Chief Karish testify last time. It's due to the volume that we're seeing. It's very difficult to spend time interviewing and getting in depth with these individuals.
So my question also is, what do you consider, how do you define a fraudulent family? Is a grandmother and a grandson considered a fraudulent family? Or is an aunt or nephew, is that a adult sibling of a minor sibling? What is a fraudulent family?
So by TVPRA definition, it's a parent or a legal guardian, or that one that is less than 18 years old.
Parent or legal guardian. So a grandmother bringing a grandson would be a fraudulent family.
It's not necessarily counted as fraudulent. They're just not a family unit. They will be, in other words.
So it would show a non-family unit is coming across. A grandmother with her grandson or granddaughter would be considered not a family unit.
That's
based
correct.
on your definitions.
Yes, sir.
Could you give some examples of the indicators that you would use to warrant them being interviewed as a possible fraudulent family?
A lot of times we'll see just the sheer reaction between the child and the adult. The agents will see that, notice that, and they'll start questioning further to try to determine if indeed it looks like there's a true familiar relationship. We've also saw quite a bit of false documentation, specifically from Honduras and Guatemala as well, birth certificates.
Could you also describe the way the CBP officers identified the migrants that participated specifically in the DNA pilot double helix? At least we're not random sample of families. Is that correct? That these are folks that agents suspected as unlikely to be with a parent before you did the DNA testing?
Thank you for your question, Senator. We sent a team down to McAllen and El Paso, Texas, and the referrals were given to us after Border Patrol had an opportunity to interview those individuals. If there were individuals that they had been suspected of being in a fraudulent family unit, they would refer it to the team that was down there to conduct the DNA testing. This was after interviews, a review of their documents, and as my colleague stated, if the behaviors did not appear to be in a familiar relationship where there seemed to be some distance between them, they used those factors to refer that family unit over for a DNA test.
I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman, but just one last question. Do you have an after-action report you could share with Congress to assess the viability of implementing DNA testing on a wider scale?
Senator, we did do an after-action report, and we will see about allowing you to see that report. Thank you.
I'd appreciate it if you could get that to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
A couple points. Those DNA tests, about $200 a test. If we've had 150,000 family units, that's about $30 million to do DNA testing. Also, according to the chart, 93% of the family units in UACs have crossed between the ports of entry. 7%, 30,000 of those have come to the ports of entry. So, I mean, the vast volume really is coming in illegally between the ports of entry because that's the easier ticket in. You know, so I understand the point you're making, but I think it's just so widely known that the way to cross is coming across illegally, because within 6, 7, 8 days you'll be set free. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Chief, for being here, and thank you for what you're doing. I'm disgusted with how Congress has handled all this. You couldn't make this up. We don't want to secure a border, then people want to complain that you're not doing your job. I think it's disgusting what people are doing. So, Mr. Hastings, what do you need Congress to do to allow you to do the job you're actually hired to do, rather than the job you're having to do today because Congress has not acted?
Thank you for the question, sir. So, as I said in my opening, I mean, first and foremost, short term, we need additional funding for the supplemental, as do our partners, because, as I mentioned again, the volume of what we have in our custody right now of that 13,000 is primarily unaccompanied alien children, approximately 1,000 today, and then in addition to that, it's single adult children single adults rather, that we have in custody as well. So HHS and ERO need funding for bed space to get those out of Border Patrol custody and into the care of those who are set up for long-term detention. That's short-term. Long-term, we need a fix that quits allowing this draw for family units and unaccompanied alien children to come to the United States. We have to stop this draw.
All right. Mr. Howe?
I agree. Thank you, Senator. I agree with everything that Chief Hastings said, but in addition, just to underscore the importance of ICE, ERO to get the proper funding and bed space and HHS so that they can relieve our facilities that weren't designed for the long-term detention so we're not in this situation.
Right. Do either of you believe we need to have more border protection? I mean, so far, you talked about the supplemental and the Flores decision primarily. So what about, do we need any funding to secure the border? I mean, this wouldn't be happening if we had a secure border.
Well, right now, I think we absolutely need more funding for border security, but our biggest issue now is pulling away from that 40 to 60% of agents that we're pulling off the line to deal with the humanitarian crisis, the families, and the UACs. That's the biggest problem that we have right now. And in the meantime, while we're dealing with that demographic, a large number of single adults are still trying to evade arrest, to your point. A large dynamic of drugs as well, trying to evade. And they're using these family units who are trying to cross as a diversionary tactic in a lot of cases to be able to make money on drugs and single adults trying to evade arrest.
Do you like to add anything?
Sure. Thank you for your question. We are the investigative arm of Department of Homeland Security, and the concern that we would have is the more resources we take away from conducting the complex criminal investigation, targeting the transnational criminal organizations that are actually organizing these smuggling loads and human trafficking, by putting people on the border to augment the need that CBP has, takes away potentially from conducting our mission, which is, protecting of the homeland via investigations and try to target these transnational criminal organizations.
Mr. Hastings, how does it make you feel when you get asked questions to suggest that you or your team doesn't care about these children that you're taking care of? How do you all feel every day when you get up and you read the papers or see the news where somebody suggests that you're not doing your job?
So it's disgusting to me and it's hurtful to me because daily I see our agents doing just the opposite. Yesterday, I saw our agents in Carrizo Springs jump out of the water, save a 13-year-old child who was unconscious, give him CPR, give him mouth-to-mouth, and essentially bring him back to life. That happened yesterday on our border, and that happens quite often, time and time again. Our men and women are out there risking their lives every day to save those migrants that are either put into a bad position by smugglers or put themselves into a bad position. So above and beyond that, our agents go to the maximum to care for these children. You've seen pictures on the as well of our agents holding these children, trying to comfort them. So it's very hurtful for us, for our agents who are out there trying to do the best they can at securing our border and dealing with this humanitarian crisis.
How's it impact your ability to recruit and retain your team to do this job?
So our workforce is doing well right now, but they want to see a light at the end of the tunnel, quite frankly, to be able to go back to their primary national security mission. And that's what we're hopeful for, that we go back to a primary national security mission and we see legislative changes that allow us to do that quit the draw for the family units and the unaccompanied alien children.
So do you have concerns when you do your job every day that because of how much time you're having to spend because Congress won't act, that we have individuals that are crossing the border that want to harm Americans?
I'm concerned with that. I'm concerned with recruiting individuals in this current state that we're in right now, recruiting good agents to do this in the future. And I'm worried when we're diverted by the humanitarian crisis, what is coming through our border. The best example I could give is about 2 months ago, we had a large group come across in Rio Grande Valley. This is broad daylight. At the same time, we had 791 pounds of cocaine a mile away across the border in broad daylight. That tells me that there's very little fear in the minds of the smuggling organizations and the narcotics traffickers because they know we're tied up with other things. Humanitarian mission.
Anybody else?
Senator, I've been around for almost 3 decades, and I've been used to this, via my career. But I'd like to put it in perspective. Can you imagine a new agent that has just come on, that just went out and had a very successful day? They seized enough fentanyl that could kill hundreds and millions of people, or they arrested a potential terrorist suspect or a gang member, or they rescued a child from an exploitation. And they get home and they turn on the nightly news. And there's information on the news saying abolish certain agencies. Can you imagine how that agent feels? I know personally when I come home, I don't even want to watch that because it's very hurtful, as my colleague stated. So it is very hurtful, and the men and women of ICE, HSI, ERO are out there every day trying to make this country safe.
Yeah. I'll just add, Senator, it's an unnecessary distraction. Our officers want to be mission-focused. They want to be doing what they were hired to do, enforcing our laws and facilitating legitimate trade and travel. We don't want to be distracted with processing migrants to the numbers we are.
Yeah, I've been here 6 months. I'm disgusted that we sit here and you watch on the news where people are trying to do their job get attacked and Congress sits here and doesn't do their job. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my entire career, my business career. You wouldn't do this in your business career. Thank you.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I disagree with what Senator Scott just said? I mean, the behavior of this Congress is absolutely pathetic. I mean, it is just pathetic. People up here should be apologizing to you for the total dereliction of duty that this Congress has undertaken. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my life. This is, by my count, the 6th hearing, full hearing, I've sat through in 4 months on the border, which is great. I'm glad we're paying some attention to it. The problem is this Congress never does anything. This Congress refuses to do anything. We know what the facts are. You've outlined them again today. CBP is overcapacity, underfunded, undermanned. ICE, overcapacity, underfunded. HHS, overcapacity, underfunded. Yet this Congress will do nothing. Meanwhile, the cartels and the smuggling rings, what are they doing? They're lying to vulnerable families, exploiting children in order to turn profits and abuse our broken asylum system. And we know what needs to happen. We know we need to reform the asylum system. We know we've got to stop the pull factors as well as address the push factors. We know all that, but this Congress won't do anything. This morning I've heard, just from my colleagues across the aisle this morning, I've heard statements like, I'm heartbroken. No one is more vulnerable than a child. The status quo is unacceptable. It is unsustainable. But yet we don't do anything to change it. And there's no will to change it. Children are being exploited. This morning we woke up to the picture of the man from El Salvador and his young daughter dead face down in the water. Why? Because they were exploited. Who knows how much That poor gentleman paid to some smuggling ring who told him that if he just came to the United States, to our border, and claimed asylum, he'd automatically get in. That was a lie. Who knows what lies he was told? And here he ends up, he and his little baby dead, and this Congress still refuses to act. I mean, it's just, it is absolutely unconscionable. We know what needs to be done. Nobody will do it. And my view is we can talk and talk and talk, but until this Congress is willing to take some action, I mean, I'm sorry for what it is you have to deal with. I am sorry that this Congress has left you without the resources you need. I'm sorry that this Congress has not done its duty. I'm sorry that this Congress has left not only our southern border exposed and vulnerable, but has left children exploited day after day after day. And until this wretched Congress decides to do something, I don't know why we even bother to have these hearings. I don't know why it even matters, because this Congress will not act. This Congress refuses to act, and it is a complete dereliction of duty. So thank you, gentlemen, for your service. Thank you for what you're doing. And I just hope, I would just say to the president, I'd encourage the president to take every action that he possibly can within the bounds of the law to address this crisis and secure the border, because it is clear to me that this Congress will not act in any meaningful way. And so long as this Congress refuses to act, the president needs to act. And so I would urge him and urge the administration to do everything within their lawful authority to address this crisis, because this Congress is not going to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hawley, you missed the opening when I described a process that this committee is going to undertake. And obviously the reason we hold these hearings is in the problem-solving process to lay out the reality. And so what I propose, talking to Senator Peters, and hopefully we can do this in as nonpartisan and uninflamed way as possible, but sit down at those tables like we did last week, where we passed the End Government Shutdown Act, a smaller problem, but one that I think our legislation solved, Senator Langford's legislation, Senator Hassan's legislation, but start working through this problem in a very organized fashion, have open meetings where we discuss these things, and we talk about, okay, what do we need to do? I mean, come from a manufacturing background, continuous improvement. What can we do to start the process? Senator Peters is working right now with me, other members on the letter of support of Operation Safe Return, a pilot program where we can gather information, where we can, surge resources to, I'm not going to repeat it, but we're working on that. But I'm hoping that you'll participate. I hope every member of this committee will participate in this process, a number of meetings, hours long, where we thoroughly discuss these problems, the different elements of the problem, and start coming up with solutions. And again, I don't know if that ends up in a complete piece of legislation, or in those discussions in organized fashion we come up with different elements that can be tacked onto a piece of legislation. So again, this place doesn't work. It does not have much of a problem-solving capacity. That's a frustration, Senator Scott, that you're certainly relaying. We all experience. And so we're going to do something different, do something paradigm-shifting. And again, whether we accomplish something or not, at least we've had a very, hopefully, thorough discussion. Senator Scott, do you want to?
I don't believe any of it.
Oh.
I sit here, preside. I sit here, preside this week, and I hear people from Democrats get up there, and all they do is complain about these people. They don't come up there and say we ought to fix the Flores decision. They don't come up there and say we ought to secure the border. All they do is try to embarrass these individuals sitting here. It's disgusting what they're doing. I watched it yesterday, presiding, that somebody did it for 15 minutes. Just sit there and lambaste them about what they're doing. I mean, look, what's Mr. Hastings? How many people have you ever worked with that says, I don't care about children. I want to do the wrong thing today.
Just the opposite. I have seen agents on their own go out and purchase toys, bring in for the children to play with. I have personally stopped by and bought meals for those that I had arrested. I've seen agents do the same thing. I've seen agents give up their lunches so people can eat. I've seen the humane professionalism and outstanding work by our agents since I've been in this agency and long before that.
So Senator Scott.
Do you know what they're doing today? The people that are going down the debate are going to the Homestead facility just to make news, not to solve a problem. They're not up here to solve a problem. They're up here to how do I make some news? And
I fully understand that. I'm as frustrated as you are with the process. I'm hoping this committee will be different. I'm hoping this process will be different. So engage in it. Let's give everybody a chance. Pardon? Again, so let's get around the table like we did last week, and let's see what we can make of this. Again, you got to be tenacious. We have to start moving the football forward, or we can throw up our hands and say we'll never fix this problem. I'm saying that photograph ought to catalyze us, and we ought to try something different and start trying to solve the problem, okay? Senator Langford.
So I want to join my colleagues in the frustration of this day. And I think what we're experiencing today is some pent-up, abject, total frustration. March the 28th of this year, at that time, Secretary of DHS came to this hearing and followed up with a letter, and this was the exact quote from her. "We now face a system-wide meltdown. DHS facilities are overflowing, agents and officers are stretched too thin, and the magnitude of arriving and detained aliens has increased the risk of life-threatening incidents." Then she said, "My greatest concern is for the children who are put at high risk by this emergency, who are arriving sicker than ever before after traveling on the treacherous trek." But instead of actually providing funding during that time period, this Congress delayed and didn't provide the funding, didn't engage, didn't try to solve it. That same secretary over and over and over again said none of this gets better until the Flores agreement settled. I've had personal conversations with Democrat and Republican members on this committee and said, at what point do we finally admit the obvious statement that the Obama administration made, that the Trump administration made, that if we don't resolve the Flores settlement, none of this ever gets better because traffickers will continue to move children across our border. But children are currently being used as pawns now on the border to try to hurt the Trump administration. And my Democratic colleagues are trying to identify children that are not getting care, at the same time slowing down the process of getting humanitarian aid to try to hurt this presidential election. These kids are not pawns, and the administration has said for month after month after month, we need additional humanitarian assistance. But here's what's happened. Nothing happened after that meeting in March. May the 1st, HHS sent us a protracted letter to try to get additional assistance and saying that we're at a crisis moment. May the 17th, they contacted us again and said we're at a critical moment. Secretary Azar from HHS came back and said at that same time period, we're at a critical moment. We tried to move a humanitarian relief package with the disaster relief package on May the 22nd, and Leader Schumer came to the floor and made this statement: that Democrats are ready to pass the bipartisan disaster relief package that's already been agreed to and written, but we should pass disaster agreement as is and return to unrelated issues at a later date. Unrelated issues is this humanitarian issue. To say these unrelated issues are slowing down our disaster work, so we'll put the humanitarian work off till later. And then yesterday, Senator Schumer was back on the floor criticizing the president and criticizing all of these folks and their agencies, saying, why aren't you taking better care of the kids? When this committee has talked about it for months, y'all have asked for it for months, and all we've got to is we'll get to unrelated issues later. Now, I'm tired of people calling my office and saying, how come you don't care about the kids? I'm sure you're tired of reading in the media every day, how come you don't care about the kids? If 500 people showed up your house tomorrow and said, I'm going to stay here for a week, would your house be ready to take 500 people? What would you do if 500 people came to your house tomorrow and said, I need to stay here? Y'all are having to manage thousands of people showing up at facilities that are not prepared for thousands of people, that never have been, and that are certainly not set up for kids. And the whole time we argue about what are we going to do when everyone knows the issue. It's the Flores settlement. Every smuggler uses that, and we won't acknowledge it, and there's been a dramatic slowdown on trying to actually get humanitarian aid. Now the Senate comes to an agreement, finally, on a humanitarian aid, and the House responds with a solely partisan bill and says, no, we're going to try to do a partisan bill. And then the conversation this week was, well, we may not get to the humanitarian bill this week if we don't get a certain vote we want on the NDAA. As Democrats, we may hold off the humanitarian bill in NDAA for 2 weeks from now. Yet another delay because it's an unrelated bill. So I don't know if we get the humanitarian vote again this week because Democratic leadership is postponing again while going to the floor and saying, why isn't the Trump administration doing more about this? You can't have it both ways. This is not about hurting the president and his presidential election hopes for next year. This is about a group of kids that we need to reduce the incentive for them to be able to come illegally across our border, and we need to take care of the folks that are already here. This is not that hard. But it's become this horrible partisan issue that I think all of us are really frustrated with, to say this has been discussed to death. We've got to be able to act on this. So I want to ask just a couple of stats. How many folks are coming across as males at this point and claiming to be 17 years old? Is there a disproportionate amount of males crossing the border and saying, I'm 17?
Sir, I don't have the exact numbers, but I can tell you that we're seeing a higher number of families with fathers as the primary parent that's coming across. So we're seeing an increase in fathers with children. I don't have the exact numbers with me.
How many countries have you seen crossing our border with minors?
So 140 different countries that we have seen apprehensions that we have made from 140 countries, 52 countries for family units. So we have family units from 52 different countries that have crossed into the U.S. this fiscal year.
And that's just this fiscal year. So that'd be since October 1 of last year.
That's correct, sir.
82% of the people you testified, people that are crossing the border, are coming from countries other than Mexico at this point. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Guatemalan authorities that I met with this week have stated that DHS has worked very hard.
And we're going to close out the show this morning with some consumer news for you. Whether it's a family vacation or just an outing around town, consumer reporter Steve Noviello has the gear you'll want to pack along. He joined Good Day this morning.
Story yesterday about the mosquito problem in our area, the Delaware Valley. Remember that? The stagnant water and all the rain we had. So, Steve Noviello, I have used these before. On that table there, you have wristbands that will help with mosquitoes?
Yes. How were your results?
I did it down in, I think I was in the Caribbean. I don't remember which island. And they had these little tiny flies and a lot of mosquitoes. And I put them on my wrists, ankles, and Steve, they worked.
Well, here's the deal. Here's what they do, and here's why they work, right? And this, by the way, the company is called Parakeeto, and they are wristbands that have 2 refill pellets that come with them. They last up to 15 days per refill, and here's what happens. They mask the scent of your breath in your body, which is really what mosquitoes are looking for. So the essential oils that are in here kind of distract the mosquitoes from finding you. This formula is DEET-free, GMO-free, gluten-free, paraben-free, and of course no animal testing. So good for mom, dad, and the kids when you're traveling this summer. And that's really what we're talking about this morning. All this great travel gear, because look, school's out, people are about to hit the road, maybe you're just going to do a day pass, but you really want to make sure that you're well prepared. Here's where we're going to start today.
Daddy.
This is the Tactical Baby Gear Day Pack, okay? Comes in daddy or mommy. You can have either patch you like, right? This is a kind of diaper bag for dads, right? Spacious, rugged, functional, double zipper entry, which I love. This is a really thoughtful design. So when it's on your back and you sling it over, you can reach in this way, you can reach in this way, you can grab it from all sorts of different angles, right? Removable changing mat. So if you've got a baby, great. So you've always got a changing mat nearby. I can tell you as a dad, changing mats are not always available for the guys, right? Also very cool removable add-ons here. We've got a pouch for wipes, a pouch for any sort of thing that gets kind of dirty or soiled and you want to just take it, hide it, and then throw it all in the laundry. And of course, Tactical Teddy with removable patches to mark milestones. These start at about $60 and go up into the hundreds, depending on how big and how outfitted they are. By the way, they always give a discount for veterans. We talked already about the mosquito repellent band, so we'll skip that and move over to here. Folks that are out on the water during the summer, it's a great time. unless you lose your sunglasses. So why not buy a pair that float? This is the Rios floating sunglasses. They're specially designed to float, great for out-on-the-water adventures. They have 100% UV protection and premium polarization as well. They start at about $50 for adults, about $30 for kids. This super easy cold flash, $10 buys it. A cool tingle of peppermint to kind of keep you nice and cool, maybe on the temples or down across the back of your neck. The essential oils are peppermint and grapeseed. And finally, take a look at this. The beach is fun unless the blanket is covered in sand. This is the Sand Light sand-free mat.
What?
The dual layer design allows sand to travel one way only. Check it out. It's underneath and it doesn't come back up.
That's crazy.
This is the one. I thought you'd like it. I thought you'd like it. Waterproof, UV resistant. You fold it up, bring it to the beach. Super portable as well. Links right now, by the way, to all these products on your station website. And when you come see me online, facebook.com/SaveMeSteve.
One of the biggest beach towels I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is a big
Covers
beach
the
towel.
studio.
Extra large there.
Real quickly.
Well, it's a big mat for the whole family to sit on, right?
That's nice. But God, I wish I had one of those because this weekend. The backpack, I need to get this for my son-in-law. They backpack in Colorado every single weekend. And that changing mat is genius.
It is.
What's the name of it?
The best. This is the Tactical Baby Gear Day Pack.
Okay.
Tactical Baby Gear Day Pack.
I'll just go to his website and figure that all
Go
out.
to Save Me Steve.
Yep.
Save Me Steve.
You got
Thanks,
it.
Steve.
Thank you. Forget.
And that is going to do it for us today at Fox 29's News Now. Be sure to follow us for all the latest breaking news at fox29.com, as well as our mobile app and across social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thank you for joining us.